my friends. A lot of lore and drama in the 5th chapter of Skeleton Crew. Finally, the characters say the name of the ship.
This ship is the Onix Cynder.
The Onix Cynder. In this video, we'll tell you what this chapter means for the whole series, now entering its final stretch, as well as the progress in character development and the references ranging from Treasure Planet to the infamous The Last Jedi. This is your spoiler warning.
What is that?
There may or may not be key facts. In this chapter, we have direction by Jake Schreier, also the director of the Thunderbolts and the movie Robot and Frank. A very good one, by the way. The episode titled You Have a Lot to Learn About Pirates has a tone that at times feels very relaxed. Personally, it reminded me of the entire sequence on the casino planet Canto Bight, which is not necessarily bad. The story is getting pretty interesting. I'm releasing 2 versions of this video, one in English and one in Spanish. Please bear with me on the English version. I'm doing everything I can to improve the experience. Episode breakdown. In this chapter, the Skeleton Crew arrives at the world of La Nupa, a new one created for this series. It's a mountainous world full of snow and aristocrats, a terrible combination. Wim, Neil, Fern, and KB accompany Jod and SM33 in search of the hideout of the legendary pirate Tak Rennod. This isn't the first time we've heard that name, as back in Atachran, Jod utters a phrase along the lines of, by the great Rennod.
Rennod's ghost, I can't believe it.
I think it's a reference to this pirate. We have several theories about it, so stick around until the end. The drama of this episode lies in the fact that a spa has been built over the supposed pirate's hideout. A spa that, on top of everything, does not allow children, so the kids must infiltrate to find the hideout, because supposedly it holds the route to the mythical planet At Atin, the home of these children. Therefore, they'll have to deal with security guards, a bounty hunter with a personal grudge against Jod for things he did in the past, and the imminent arrival of the pirate crew of Captain Brutus, that wolfish guy. Quickly moving on to the Easter egg hunt and references. As soon as we arrive at La Nupa, we meet the host, played by Julianne Emery, whom we saw in Better Call Saul. We also have the appearance of the aforementioned bounty hunter, named Pocket, played by Kelly MacDonald. We know her as the English voice of Merida from Brave. She's a mercenary with a complicated past with Jod, and she mentions that she knew him by the name Dash Zentin. Shortly after, the security guards refer to Jod as Jodwick Zank. So here in this episode alone, we get 2 more names to add to the long list of aliases this rogue character, played by Jude Law.
How many names does he have?
We already had Captain Silvo, Crimson Jack, and what I believe is his real name, the one he tells the kids, Jod Nanawut. Who knows? At the La Nupa Spa, there are dozens of references to various Star Wars species, particularly highlighting the intergalactic banking clan made up of the Moon. This is a powerful institution involved in financing the Confederacy of Independent Systems, or the Separatists, during the Clone Wars. We got a good look at them in Attack of the Clones, as well as in that arc with flirtatious Padme and jealous Anakin, where Clovis appears. The leaders of the banking clan are of the same species as Darth Plagueis, the Moon Sith, who connects subtly with the story told in the Legends novel Darth Plagueis. We also see in La Nupa a fellow member of Jabba the Hutt's species, as well as this diminutive servant species, also seen in The Last Jedi at that casino. In the lower levels of the spa, we encounter the creature Cathalops, a colossal alien that in the end turns out to be kind-hearted and very fond of stories. I tried to find a parallel, but the only thing that came to mind was the creature from Rogue One, Bor Gullet, the telepathic beast in the service of Saw Gerrera. In the private chamber of Tak Rennod, we have a series of traps that strongly resemble those in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. While in the throne room, I couldn't help but think of the Temple of Doom, and of course the treasure chamber of Captain Flynn in Treasure Planet, the adaptation of Treasure Island. It's fun to have all these cross-references. Of course, the whole "you can't touch the treasure" thing reminded me of the classic Aladdin from 1992 in the Cave of Wonders. When Jod orders SM33 to fill the antechamber with acid where his old crew is, besides being a grim moment, it reminded me of the great Yondu Udonta taking out his former allies in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2. Here, of course, we see a very ornate lightsaber decorated with silver and gold, which could be from the infamous High Republic, but I choose to think it's actually a reference to the Old Republic. That way we can avoid the frustration of talking about that series we shall no longer name on this channel. Let's just forget about it. To close out the references, let's start with the ships. As soon as we arrive at Lanupa, we get a glimpse in the background of a yacht that reminds me a lot of the one Dryden Voss had in the movie Solo, a Star Wars story. That was a first light yacht, an iconic ship belonging to the Crimson Dawn. On the other hand, the fact that we can finally talk about the Onix Cynder in universe makes it even more evident that it's an allusion to the Black Pearl. With this ghostly and legendary quality the ship is beginning to acquire. It might even be hundreds of years old. This deep analysis and theories, let's start by mentioning everything related to the parents on At-Atin. We have Wendell, Farah, and Numa, who are starting to show varying levels of desperation because they're struggling to figure out how to recover their children. Here, the droids are keeping a very close watch on them, and I find it extremely interesting how they fear the looming figure of the supervisor. While we initially theorized that this wall might be controlled by some kind of artificial intelligence, I believe there are some details suggesting the presence of a decrepit human mind behind the decisions and social order. The droids aren't inherently evil, although we see plenty of references to I, Robot, Terminator, and other similar content. I think there's indeed a sinister human mind behind all this. Of course, I could be wrong, but it would be too obvious if machines were simply being overseen by more machines. It reminds me a lot of the Separatists. There was always a figure, whether it was Count Dooku or Palpatine himself, who benefited from all the chaos. There's something like a Wizard of Oz figure controlling the hidden presence of At-Atin. Now, the importance of this planet as one of the 9 jewels of the High Republic is becoming increasingly clear, as we're told in the recording of Captain Pirate Tak Rennod that it's one of the mint houses of the Old Republic. I think this directly alludes to Money Heist. It's not a series I've watched, so I won't say much about it. This is the place where the Dactaries were minted. I think this still doesn't fully reveal the mystery surrounding these 9 planetary jewels of the Old Republic, but it does make it clear that At-Atin holds enough resources to trigger a gold rush in Jodna Nawud, who has already turned against the children and taken control of the crew. Speaking of Jod, throughout these 5 chapters, we've been discovering that this rogue doesn't just have multiple identities, but also a network of layers, complexity, and nuances. While waiting for this 5th chapter, I went back and rewatched the previous 4, and I think Jod isn't lying about being a Force user. I think he really does have access to this mystical energy field. In this chapter, he even quotes Qui-Gon Jinn with, "Your focus determines your reality," one of the lessons Qui-Gon gave the young Anakin Skywalker in Episode 1. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to tell him what he did say to Obi-Wan Kenobi in that same movie. Don't center on your anxieties. Keep your concentration here and now, where it belongs. Something that would have helped Anakin a lot. But focus. Let's return to the present. I think Jod might have met a Jedi. Maybe he wasn't an apprentice or anything, but he knows enough to, through sheer tenacity and practice, have basic mastery of the Force, enough to move small objects and impress others. But I find it curious how, as far as we've seen, he doesn't seem to know how to use the Force to fight or to trick weak-minded individuals he encounters. So I don't think he had formal training, or at least I don't think he's that skilled. This whole lightsaber business, first with Wim's clumsiness in activating it, and later with how the chapter ends with Jod acquiring the weapon, suggests that we'll finally see how capable Jod is with the Force. Continuing with this Captain Silvo, the man of many names, I don't think he's given up on protecting the kids. At this point, he wanted to take control only to ensure they wouldn't interfere with him claiming the treasure of At-Atin. But by now, I think that if he were truly that evil, he would have simply abandoned them there. And I noticed he did care when Wim triggered the trap and they all went down the slide. Yes, it was a dark moment when Jod disposed of his crew with acid, and of course, he has dark motivations. But let's remember that this is Disney, and very likely this character played by Jude Law will have a very express redemption arc, just like John Silver in Treasure Planet. Now, the cherry on top theory, I was watching the episode with my brother in Spanish, and he noticed, and I confirmed, that the actor and dubbing director for this series, Hector Gomez Gil, voices SM33. You might ask, and so what? When we're watching the hologram of Captain Tak Rennod, it's not only evident that his face is intermittently covered, but it's also the same voice actor playing this character, Hector Gomez Gil himself. Frame by frame, I could see in the hologram that it seems to depict a weak alien. the same species as the famous pirate Hondo Onaka. However, at times it looks strange, and you can see the elbow of a burly, broad-shouldered droid, very similar to SM-33. Same voice, same appearance, except for brief moments when you can glimpse what looks like a Weequay chin. I think this points to something very similar to what happened with Captain Silvojud Nanawood, where no credits appeared for the character anywhere. There's also no credit for Captain Rennod. This makes me think that SM-33 could indeed be some kind of iteration of Captain Tak Rennod. I mean, I think this pirate did exist at one time as an organic being, and that he was possibly a fellow Hondo Onaka, but that upon his death centuries ago, he was replaced by his droid SM-33 to keep his legacy alive and continue telling his stories. This would be narratively beautiful. It would explain, on one hand, why his face wasn't shown in that hologram sequence and why the one-eyed robot's behavior is somewhat erratic. It would be very interesting if, by the end of this series, this is confirmed. It would also confirm that the Onix Cynder had indeed been buried under At-Atin for centuries. Let's see how they develop this. Conclusion: Skeleton Crew has gotten serious. I've noticed that not many people are watching this series, not just based on the views of these videos, but in general because it hasn't made much noise on social media. But there are only 3 episodes left, and I think the best is yet to come. This series is set in the same timeline as The Mandalorian, so I wouldn't rule out some pretty big cameos in the next 3 episodes. Eventually we'll end up on At-Atin and reunite with the kid's parents. As a late theory, I find it very interesting that Neil's father has never appeared, except briefly in the background in the first episode. This makes me think that maybe he's directly connected to the supervisor, because the presence of Neil's father is always hinted at, but he hasn't had a close-up yet. There's something there. What do you think of this series? Are you excited about the ending? Don't miss the latest episode of the podcast with China and Dany Divagues, where we did an in-depth analysis of War of the Rohirrim, which we published a few days ago. Soon I'll release a new episode, which is something like a Christmas special, though it doesn't make much sense anymore as such, where we talk about comfort movies to watch during the season. So don't miss it. Thank you so much for your time. If you made it to the end, let me know in the comments. It really helps me improve these videos. I'm Dany Divagues. See you soon.